So you made it to the interview. Now come the questions. You should be able to discuss all the aspects of your file. The interviewer may ask about issues with low or failed step examinations, or if there was a delay in taking them, why the delay. The interviewer will likely have already read your CV and could ask you about your research, volunteer work that might show leadership skills, and for the IMGs, of course, your US clinical exposures. Be honest about your involvement in research, but take credit for the hard work you did, and be able to discuss the studies robustly, not just that you look through files for some data. For the IMGs, talk about how the US clinical exposures helped you acclimate and learn in new ways, and how those rotations grew your interpersonal and communication skills. With regard to volunteer work or other work experiences, tell the interviewer how that experience enhanced your leadership skills and ability to work in teams. You may get asked about the personal statement, especially if it explains any irregularity in your file or any atypical course you took on the way to residency. If you are explaining a deficiency, take clear ownership of what went wrong and tell them what you learned from that experience and how you grew from it as a person and as a physician. Don't get defensive or blame others. There are not usually many questions about the letters of recommendation because most applicants waive their rights to see them. The interviewer could ask about your relationship with the letter writer to ascertain how much they can rely on the letter to properly represent your clinical abilities. The AMG transcripts and MSPEs are usually straightforward enough not to engender too many questions on the interview day, unless they are failed courses or remediation of some kind. The IMG transcripts and MSPEs, though, can really run the gamut all the way to cryptic. Depending on the experience of your interviewer, IMGs may need to do a lot of explaining. Try to keep it simple by telling the interviewer your class ranking or quartile or quintile if it's known, or about any awards that you won in school that let them know how well you did. The other part of the interview will usually involve questions that are trying to get a feel for your ability to handle situations. They might ask you several questions about situations that came up during your clinical training and how you handled them. I would suggest thinking before you speak. It's fine to take a moment to consider what you're being asked and come up with a strong example with a robust line of thinking. It might seem like an eternity of thinking to you, but it's usually only about 5 or 10 seconds that the interviewer will not mind. If you really can't come up with an example or a robust answer, ask the interviewer if that question can be put on hold for now and go on to another topic. With these behavioral or situational interviewing questions, you need to have more than a one-line answer. Be thoughtful and find ways to show your emotional intelligence. If the interviewer asks you what you do for fun, instead of just listing a bunch of stuff quickly, pick a key hobby and talk about it in more detail. It will show a richer complexity to you as a person. Illegal questions are unfortunately still all too common during interviews. Areas you should not be asked about include, but aren't limited to, sexual orientation, politics, religion, age, gender, family planning, etc. If you are asked about these topics, try to steer the conversation back to safe ground quickly. If you must answer, do so briefly and then get back onto another topic. If you're asked one of these questions, you can feel free to tell them whatever they want to hear, since it's really none of their business anyway. For instance, if someone asks you if you plan to have children during a residency, just tell them no and move on, even if you plan to. If they ask you where you're going to rank the program, just tell them you haven't finished interviewing yet, so you can't be sure, or tell them that this is where you want to be, even if you don't know yet because you haven't decided and you're not certain. There will be some interviewers that ask you medical cases or questions. This is less common now, but if it happens, try to just roll with the punches and put a thoughtful answer or broad differential diagnosis out there so that even if you're not certain, it shows that you can at least be able to think and reason on the spot. You will likely be asked if you have any questions, and you should. It can look unimpressive if you're on an interview day and have no questions about a program. It doesn't show interest. Look up the program and the department before the interview day so you can ask intelligent questions and show your intent and interest. You can use the program's website, YouTube videos, Twitter feed, Frida, Doximity. You can talk to your mentors or alumni from your school that interviewed and matched at that program. If you know who will be interviewing you, the interviewer themselves, look up that person and their research or interests as well. If you have multiple interviews that day, it is okay to ask the same question to several people to see if there's consistency with their answers. Save questions about call and SCUT for the residents and ask more about the curriculum and educational opportunities to the faculty and the program leadership. Ask the residents about how much actual autonomy they really get and how much research time that they really spend to build up their CVs. You may also want to ask the residents how they like the city and the amenities, if the program is supportive when a resident is pregnant, etc. Good questions for the program leadership include things like, what changes or improvements do you foresee in the academic program in the future? Why did that person come to be part of that program? How does the program support diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do the graduates of the program wind up in academia or community practice after training? And of course, you can ask them clarifying questions about the materials or presentations that they had if you sincerely want to know more about those areas. You should try to practice answering questions with trusted friends and advisors. You can find questions to practice with online. Stay calm, be prepared.